You know, we've all had a bad teacher at least once. You know the one. He's got a teaching certificate and a bachelor's in biology, but you're pretty sure he's got a PhD in being a jerk, and judging by how poorly he teaches, his BS degree feels more like a BS degree. The American education system is a giant mess, and although I suppose I can make statistical arguments about why education in the States is hot garbage, this is story time, so you already know what you're getting. Now, the first distinction I want to make is that there's a difference between bad teachers and inexperienced teachers. I kind of figure that being a teacher or any profession in general is kind of like building a D&D character. No matter what you do, at level 1, you suck. Like Miss Kai, my AP statistics teacher from high school. Now, Miss Kai, bless her heart, is one of the sweetest people in the entire galaxy. She loved SpongeBob and cats and was super passionate about her job, but I swear to God, she couldn't lecture to save her life. Now, when I had her, it was her very first year teaching statistics, and it showed. To give an idea of the sort of things that happened, every chapter we'd start by defining all the terms for that chapter. The first week of school, she gave us a lengthy PowerPoint presentation and we all took notes. No biggie, I could handle it. But at some point in the presentation, she just kinda stopped and just stared at the board quietly for like a minute. Listen, if a teacher does this, get very, very concerned. And then she turned around, took a deep breath, and told us, "Erase all your notes." Miss Kai had mixed up the definitions for all the terms, and since we were 4th period, this meant she didn't realize this for the 3 previous classes that she had. And the sad part was that this happened again and again for the following 5 chapters of lectures. Oh, great, what's going on? Yeah, listen, I'm working on something right now. Gray, not now. We'll take care of it later. Gray. Back to what I was saying. Another time, Miss Kai spent all day lecturing on how to run statistical analyses tests. It was the day right before an exam, so when I got home after cross-country practice, I made sure to do lots of practice problems. Now, the curious thing was that many of the answers I got on my calculator came out as error and didn't match the answers in the back of the textbook, but for some reason, I didn't suspect that anything was wrong because, I don't know, I'm stupid. Test day came around and I thought I did fine. But a couple days later, Miss Kai came in with the exams, and the first thing she said was the thing that no student ever wants to hear. "So, I taught you all wrong, but I've already entered in the scores." Thank God she immediately said she'd give us extra credit assignments to raise our grades, because I swear to God, some people carried knives to school. But these are all mistakes I feel she made because it was her first year teaching statistics, not because she was a bad teacher. A bad teacher would be like the teacher I had for freshman year trigonometry, Mr. Asymptote. Get it? Mr. A is the kind of teacher that shouldn't. One day in class, I was playing Magic the Gathering with a friend after we'd finished our classwork. We were being pretty quiet about it, just summoning our creatures and casting our spells. At the beginning of high school, I cared a little bit too much about what other people thought about me. Then again, I still care a little bit too much about what other people think about me. But I tried not to draw too much attention to myself back then, which I guess is a little different now, because now I love drawing attention to myself. But Mr. A noticed and called me a nerd in front of the entire class. Now, being called a nerd doesn't really bother me anymore, but back then it felt like a death sentence. Now I don't really care as I go around telling people that I watch anime of questionable and dubious integrity. I knew Mr. A was trying to provoke us, especially me, because Mr. A was one of those old style racist Japanese people that constantly talked about the good old days of Imperial Japan and hated Korean people, and I'm Korean. I signaled my friend not to respond, so we just kept on summoning our creatures and casting our spells. I think the fact that I didn't acknowledge his insult made him quite upset though, so a couple minutes later, Mr. A walked over to us and threw us a penny. I thought he had dropped the coin by accident, so, like, I offered to give him the penny back, but then he said, "No, keep it. It's how much you're worth." I went home and cried after that. The worst part was that Mr. A just didn't even know his own material. I don't know why the school board hired him to be a math teacher when his degree was in biology. and even if he did know the material, his lectures only consisted of doing one in-class example and maybe a worksheet. And if you asked him any questions because the worksheet covered material he didn't talk about, he would accuse you of not paying attention before threatening to slam you with detention. Another bad teacher I'd heard about but didn't have personally was the Spanish teacher, Miss Take. Now, Miss Take was an elderly lady. She taught for 30 plus years and planned to retire, but on her last year on the job, she apparently calculated the exact number of days and hours she needed to work to barely pass under the next tier of taxes while still getting full-time employment benefits. She did zero lecturing, and every day in class, whether or not it was her or a substitute teacher, her class would just watch cat videos all day. Now, this sounds awesome until you realize that all the kids she was teaching were in Spanish 1, and many universities in California require you to finish 2 years of language classes. But you know, sometimes it's not even that the teachers are bad, sometimes the administration is bad. So my freshman year of college, I had the incredible misfortune of having Dr. McFranz for General Chemistry 1. This man tried to teach, but the thing is, he was always 100% wrong. He would explain concepts, but his explanations were wrong. He'd do in-class examples, but the answers were always wrong. He contradicted the very textbook the course required us to buy, but when test day came around, we were expected to know how to solve his questions correctly. Normally, I just get really frustrated, but the confusing thing was that Dr. McFranz was the head of the university's chemistry department, but he was getting every single thing he taught wrong. And that kind of struck me as odd, especially since everyone else who took his lectures in years prior recommended that I take his course. So the following semester, I don't know why, but I decided to swing by Dr. McFranz's office. He vaguely remembered me as one of the few people that did okay in his class, and eventually I decided to ask him about my suspicions regarding how poorly he taught the previous semester. As I brought this up, Dr. McFranz sighed and asked if I wanted to talk in his office. And then, very quietly, he vaguely suggested the following to me. Apparently, the university had enrolled too many students in the science programs. Normally, a university would have to tell them that the programs were full and risk losing the kids. The issue was that the university's administration was greedy and rather liked bringing in all these kids and their money and didn't want to piss them off by telling them that they couldn't fit into their programs. So the dean of the university essentially told Dr. McFranz, "Hey, Dr. McFranz, that's a nice job you got there. You see, we have a problem, and you're gonna fix this, or else." In other words, he was forced to teach badly to get kids to drop out of their classes. Well, that got dark, so let me tell you something a bit funnier. Remember Mr. A? So Mr. A had this obsession, no, addiction to Cheez-Its. He had entire boxes of Cheez-Its behind his desk, on the drawer, and all over the floor. Whenever he wasn't stroking his ego, he'd just be inhaling this stuff. So apparently, in one of the years before I had his class, he actually ate enough Cheez-Its to get Cheez-It poisoning. Like, he actually ate enough Cheez-Its to have it poison his bloodstream, and he had to go to rehab, and they made him eat real cheese in order to force him to break away from his addiction. So at the very end of the year, some of the kids decided to get a little bit of justice. Someone, I don't know who, brought him a box of Cheez-Its. Except the only thing inside were celery sticks. Listen, teaching is not an easy job. If my experience as a private tutor, which are stories for another time, taught me anything, it's hard to teach even one kid at a time, so I can't imagine the immense pressure of teaching 30 plus kids at the same time for several hours a day, 5 days a week. If you're new to teaching and doing your best, honestly, bless you. But I swear to God, some teachers are really the hottest of garbage. Anyhow, video's over. Sorry it took me so long to get around to doing another story time. I wanted to come back to doing these when I felt I was near my best. I'm gonna try to upload this stuff every 2 weeks-ish. Anyhow, remember to always wash your hands before eating, and goodbye!